Out of all the whiskies in my collection, Daniel told me to pick just one and tell you a little story about it. Apparently you guys like learning about whiskey and talking about whiskey and stuff. We're gonna do that. And I think you might be surprised about the whiskey I picked. So welcome to the Whisky Vault, sort of, through the power of technology. So Daniel reached out to me to basically kind of host Whisky Vault for Dry Week, and that's what I'm doing. So who am I? I'm Phil. I'm from First Fill Whiskey. I also run a whiskey YouTube channel. I'm based in New Zealand, from Ohope Beach. Like, there's a volcano like out there. There's heaps of volcanoes in New Zealand. Pretty cool, but not as cool as this whiskey coming up. Basically, what I want to talk about is why this whiskey is so good for flavor. But also, I think whiskey's a lot more than just flavor. It's about the story behind it, it's about who made it, and it's about what it represents. The whiskey from this distillery, it must have been probably one of the first 5 single malt whiskeys I had. One of my mates came over and was like, let's go do a distillery tour. And we decided to go up to Scotland and we visited a bunch of distilleries. At this point, I actually used to hate whiskey, and we went to the Glenfarclas distillery. I remember I finished the tour at Glenfarclas and I thought, I don't even like whiskey. Like, this is disgusting. So what happened? What happened? It's a long story. You can see it on my channel. I got into whiskey, I fell down the rabbit hole, and then I came back to Glenfarclas, and now I love this stuff. But why did I pick this? Well, I think, as I was saying, there's more to just the flavor, and I do love the flavor of this. It's amazing. But it's about the story behind it, the time, who made it, how they made it, and where you were when you drank it. Yeah, I think we can kind of get lost into the details and lost in like the specs and stuff. And I love doing that. Like, you know, don't get me wrong, I do like doing that. But there's also a part that one of my favorite things about whiskey is that when you have a bunch of mates around and you're all chatting about something, you're just having a good chat, a good catch up, and then a good whiskey is a whiskey that can interrupt the conversation. Okay, and we start chatting a little bit about the whiskey. It's like the whiskey's almost kind of a guest at your house that also has something to talk about. That's what I think really makes a good whiskey, one that interrupts the conversation. So you're around good friends and you're around good whiskey. The other thing I find is time. In the age of TikToks and instant prime delivery, 1-day deliveries, and that's actually, we don't actually get that here in New Zealand. Actually, it's more like a 7-day Amazon delivery. You guys in the US and UK are lucky. We still got pigeons. We don't actually have pigeons. As opposed to what some might tell you, looking at you Australians, we actually do have cars and stuff. We do. We even have the internet. That's how I'm getting this video to you, through the internet. Anyway, the time, everything today is fast, it's instant. But then you have this product, which is slow, very, very slow. This one here, 21-year-old. I want you just to think, what were you doing 21 years ago? What was I gotta do some maths. When I came here for maths, I was a young man. I didn't have this beard. It was a long time ago. But even like, say, even modern distilleries and modern regions where whiskies are a little bit younger, you know, they're in climates where the cask breathes faster, places like New Zealand, Australia, even for their young whiskey, like most of them are going to be at minimum 2-year-old. And most of them will be 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. So that's a long time. That is not an instant thing. And then you could think behind that. Say you want to make whiskey, right? You have to build a distillery. That could take a few years, get all those consents, build it all up, get your still in. That can take you years. But then it's not like you can sell whiskey straight away. First you make the whiskey, you distill it, and then you have to age it in barrels, normally around that sort of 3+ years. Many much older, like this one. But then think even beyond that. So this dram here, what went into making this whiskey was more than just how long it was in the cask. Think about when the acorn fell from the oak tree and the tree started growing, which one day was cut down and turned into a cask. Like, there's all that side. Think about the barley, when the barley started growing. Just so much that goes into the whiskey, and it just goes so slow. Anyway, let's jump into some tasting notes. This is the Glenfarclas 21, 43%. The reason I like this one is it's one of the most affordable old whiskies. Pretty much every old whiskey these days is super, super expensive. Personally, I don't even buy old whiskey anymore. Even 18-year-olds are kind of out of my price range these days. Glenfarclas is one of those distilleries where you can still get whiskies with high age statements. To be fair, I did buy this a few years ago. I don't know what it costs now, but for me, if you want to taste something a little older without spending heaps of money, I do like this whiskey. What I like about old whiskey versus young whiskey, with young whiskey, it's often playing one note. It's a bit like a solo bass guitarist. Whereas old whiskey, I often actually struggle to find tasting notes as easy as the younger stuff. So why is that? Well, I find it's more like the orchestra. There are so many notes and complexity. I'm not saying it's more intense. I'm saying that it's just complexity. And so when I taste this, it actually often takes a while to figure out the flavors I'm actually getting. And I find the best thing for that is just time. So with old whiskey, definitely give it a little bit of time in the glass. I've often found this, like I'll come to this dram and I'll be like, oh, this is not that great. Maybe I've just had a 12-year-old Glenfarclas or something. And I come to this and I think, oh, this tastes a little bit flat. And then leave it 30 minutes. And then I come back to it and it's just, wow, that's doing all sorts of things. Straight away, you're getting that sort of dried apricot, dried fruits. I find Glenfarclas is a very sherry cask forward distillery. So straight away, I'm thinking about what are those sherry cask notes and can I find them in this? So I'm looking for normally dried fruit, spice, raisins, almost like a leather boot, and this nice malty background, biscuity, almost like in New Zealand, we have these biscuits which have like this gummy kind of red thing in the middle. Kind of reminded me of that, almost like a syrupy kind of, how would I explain it? It's kind of like a strawberry kind of biscuit sort of thing. That's so lovely. The spice coming through, great stuff. So back to where we were, so think about the oak tree, but it's not just that. Glenfarclas are a family-owned distillery. A lot of the knowledge has been passed down for generations. How long did that take to learn all the things they're doing now? So overall, that's what I love about whiskey. It's not just about the flavors. It's about the time that went into it. Just in a stage of history that we're in, where everything is so instant, this is the thing that is so patient. And I think there's something we can learn from that. And what I'd love to know is, what is your favorite old whiskey that you like to sip? Or what is the whiskey you've had that has interrupted the conversation? I'd love to hear what you have to say down in the comments. But above all, share and enjoy. And I'm glad you're here. Beauty.